Today is the Journée Internationale de la Francophonie, part of the wider Semaine de la Francophonie. It's a week where we celebrate the French language and French-speaking communities around the world. For RFI and RFI language services, we have focused on bilingual French dictionaries in the given languages. In our case, it is the French-English dictionary, and specifically the French-English dictionary of 1611, compiled by Cotgrave. To find out more about this dictionary and its history, we talked to Susan Baddeley, Professor of English Language and Civilization at the University of Versailles, Saint-Quentin. She's also a historian of the English language and wrote an introduction to Cotgrave's dictionary, which was published in 2011. Who was Randall Cotgrave?
Well, we know quite a bit about him thanks to a descendant of his, actually, somebody called Peter Cotgrave, who did a bit of research on the family tree. We know that he was born in Chester in about 1570. His father was some sort of official in the town. I think he was a registrar. So Cotgrave went to the local grammar school and to St. John's College, Cambridge, where he studied law. And then after that, he became a student at the Inns of Court and ended up being a member of the household of the Cecil family. So William Cecil, who was the first minister of Elizabeth, and his son. In fact, Cotgrave's master was William Cecil the younger, so the son of Robert Cecil, the minister.
And how did he end up becoming involved in the creation of a bilingual French-English dictionary? It doesn't seem something that's very obvious from, the beginning of the 17th century. It's not the first thing that would pop into your head.
No, especially he was a lawyer. He wasn't a literary person or a philologist. I think he travelled quite a lot to France. I think he accompanied either Robert Cecil or William Cecil to France. We know he was in contact with people in the British, or the English rather, embassy in Paris. What we do know is that the Cecils had an enormous library. We know that they spoke French and they probably had a lot of French books. And it was this library, actually, that gave Cotgrave the opportunity to produce the dictionary, because what he did was literally go through the library book by book, noting down on what would be the equivalent of index cards, every word that he came across. And that's how he compiled his dictionary. So it was really a dictionary of French as it really is, not something that he came out of his head or was based on another dictionary, an earlier dictionary, but a very modern, today we'd say a corpus-based dictionary.
Okay, so basically, what was in this dictionary is, obviously a dictionary translates words from one language into another, but right. As far as I understand, there was a lot of aphorisms, there was a lot of localisms, yes. There was a lot of kind of quite interesting things that even linguists today would find very interesting. What exactly was in the dictionary?
Well, a lot of things, words, obviously, but as you said, there were a lot of sayings, proverbs, a lot of them very anti-women. So better not mention them. We find also a lot of things like recipes. He noted down a lot of recipes, and actually, Cotgrave's dictionary is a great source for people studying things like food, because there's a gap between the medieval cookery books and the ones of the later 17th century, so you can find quite a lot in Cotgrave's dictionary. What he did especially was that he didn't select the words at all. So any French words that he came across, he would write down, even if they were technical terms or vulgar terms. Quite a few things not safe for work in there. Also regional terms. And he was very fond of Rabelais. So all of these, creative neologisms from Rabelais, he wrote them all down. He didn't always know what they meant, but he wrote them all down.
And so the edition of 1611 then is kind of very much a hodgepodge of just everything. It's
almost an encyclopedia.
Rather than the dictionary. Okay, and there was a later edition then in 1632, I think it was. Was there much difference? Was it more codified?
There were 4 editions afterwards. At one point, I think it was 1650, they also included the other way round, so French, English and English, French, but the English-French dictionary is much shorter. I think it's from 1632 that they put a little cross beside some words which are obsolete. And people felt that they didn't really have their place in a dictionary. It was the time, so early 17th century, this is when the Académie was founded, so a few years after the second edition. So people in France especially are more, I would say, more concerned with good use. That wasn't Cotgrave's problem. Any French use was good for him.
Which obviously wouldn't go down very well today in the Academy, especially not.
It wasn't really in the spirit of the Academy. No.
When it came out in 1611, then how was it received on both sides of the channel? How did people in England react to it?
It's difficult to say. I don't think we hear very much about it. We know that he intended it for both English and French, because there wasn't a comparable French dictionary at the time. The people who used it was used mostly for teaching French in England. There was a great demand for the teaching of French in England. But a few years after, quite a long time after Cotgrave, somebody called Guy Miege produced a new dictionary, French and English, which was based very strongly on Cotgrave, but in which he took out all of the archaic words and the regional terms and the not safe for work things. But people were furious about it. They said they preferred Cotgrave's dictionary. So what did he do? A couple of years later, he produced this dictionary of barbarous French, with all of the words that he'd cut out of Cotgrave to bring it up to date.
Now, you mentioned earlier when we were in an exchange earlier about fun facts from the dictionary. Do you have your favourite fun facts about his dictionary?
Well, there are quite a lot. If you'd like to have a look at it, this is Cotgrave's dictionary. So 1611. Yes, so it's 400 years old, but still in very good shape. One interesting word is the word giraffe, for example. There are other words in here that he found in French books written in French, that were unknown of in English. So something like giraffe, there wasn't an English word for it, so what does he do? He just describes it. And it's quite funny. A certain spotted and long-necked beast, gotten by a camel on a female panther, whose forelegs are much longer than her back legs. So that was the state of science and zoology at the time.
You'd never seen a giraffe?
No, nobody at the time would have seen a giraffe. So he attempts to describe it, and there are quite a few things like that. We mentioned proverbs as well. Here there's a proverb and a poulet, and it's a proverb or a saying: "Veau mal cuits et poulet cru sont les cimetières bossus." So raw veal and chickens make swelling churchyards. So if you eat raw meat, you'll end up dead. And then all of these these recipes for sauces. Under sauce Barbe Robert, and how to make it, and sauce blanche.
It's quite incredible. Like with this, you're not just, it's not just a translation from English into French or French into English or whatever. This it's actually a historical record of the day, of the way people lived.
Yes. And that's what differentiates it from other dictionaries. The French Latin dictionaries of the time were in fact based on Latin.
Right.
If you think of Robert Etienne's French Latin dictionaries, the source of that was Latin, and what they did was translate the Latin into French. So the French in that dictionary was in fact originally Latin, based on Latin books. So this is really the first dictionary of French that takes into account all of the language, which is based on authentic sources and authentic examples of the use of French.
Now, dictionaries have been used over history as a kind of political tool, of a thing that actually supports different regimes, different points of views and stuff like that. How did this fit into that?
Well, one thing you could possibly talk about is religion. Cotgrave includes quite a few religious terms, things like transubstantiation, where there were big debates about that. But he tends not to get involved. He's quite neutral.
Standing back, basically.
Yeah. Well, this was very much his work. He wasn't producing it for any institution or under the patronage of the king or anything. It was very much an individual enterprise.
It's not the first time we've seen something similar. It's not quite the same, but 100 years earlier there had been John Palsgrave.
Oh, yes, that's him, yes.
There.
That's him here. This is not the original. This is 1530, and this was the first exhaustive, complete grammar of the French language, and it was written by an Englishman in English. Because, again, to respond to a demand for teaching of the French language in England at the time, the author was the French tutor to Mary Tudor, so the sister of Henry VIII. Who went to marry the King of France. So Palsgrave was her French tutor and taught her French so that she would be at ease in the French court. But again, what he did something similar to Cotgrave, because neither of them were French speakers. It wasn't their mother tongue. So both of them got hold of as many French books as they could. So Cotgrave for the vocabulary, Palsgrave for the grammar. And he literally worked out all of the rules of French grammar by himself. Using the Latin model, the Latin approach to the 8 parts of speech, but it was actually having to translate the French parts into English, which helped him a lot to understand how some things which maybe hadn't been very well described in Latin grammar, how they worked. And pronunciation as well. He describes in great detail things that had never been described before, like nasal vowels, en, on. And he describes in very anatomical detail exactly how these nasal vowels are produced.
Compared with today, how would that compare with a French grammar book now, or something similar?
It's quite similar. It goes probably into more detail. It does also attempt to to see French as maybe closer to Latin. Today we wouldn't really be bothered with Latin, but here the idea is to show that French is close to Latin.
Just as a kind of general question, I guess, to wrap up, just your assessment of the French language today. Do you feel you can comment on that in France, or? Well, I mean, it's evolving. Obviously, it's obviously evolving very quickly, like other modern languages. And I'm just wondering, like, how does it compare with, for example, the French of the early 17th century?
Oh, it's very different from the French of the 17th century. It's more of a world language these days. There's of course the debate about borrowings, about English words especially coming into French, but I study the history of the English language, and English is nothing but borrowings, practically. So there is this, what would you say, reluctance maybe to see borrowings as part of French, but there are a lot of French words which were borrowed into English and then the French borrowed back again, like tunnel or ticket or all sorts of words. I think it's wrong to try to fix a language especially through a dictionary. That wasn't Cotgrave's objective. I don't think he wanted to fix the language. He said he would have kept going. They had to literally, take the dictionary out of his hands to have it published. Otherwise, he'd have kept going. But the academy project was very much one to fix the language.
Right.
And Samuel Johnson's dictionary tried to do the same thing, but they, of course, failed. You can't
fix a language.
You can't fix a language, no.
Right. Susan Baddeley, thank you very much.
Thank you.